I wanted to take this opportunity just to explain a little bit about how I think about the whole issue of emerging markets, entrepreneurship, and the future of funding. The wisdom of the crowd is how you've termed the summit. And I'd like to maybe break this down just by way of background. I've developed a new course along with another colleague of mine at the Harvard Business School, which we teach in the MBA program, called Sustainable Investing. It's all about impact investing, integrating ESG into the investment process. It's venture capital, private equity, public markets, equity, debt, all the asset classes. And so I just take a few vignettes from that, and a lot of the focus of the course, as you've outlined, is on emerging markets. And so if you think about the trends that we see, which both from a demand and supply standpoint, which I think the audience here could perhaps capitalize on, are multiple fold. So on the demand side, clearly, and as you've identified within the GSE, the UN Sustainable Goals have now become kind of the Northern Star, if you will, of development. And it's clear by all analysis, including what we've done at HBS, that essentially about $7 trillion are needed each year to achieve the UN SDGs. And perhaps only about half of that can come from governments and philanthropy. So there's another half, about $3.5 billion, that essentially needs to come from the private sector. And a lot of that will come from entrepreneurs like the audience in this meeting. So there's that one big issue, demand issue. The second issue is, I would argue, is the demographic issue, and there are demographic issues both on the demand side and the supply side. So on the demand side, we've done a lot of research again at HBS, and other institutions have as well, that if you actually interview baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Z, and millennials, the baby boomers we had interviewed, and said 25% of them felt, yeah, impact was important, that we had to look at impact was important in the investment decisions, et cetera. But if you actually look at that same level for millennials and Gen Z, it's closer to 60 to 70%. So therefore, you have this huge demand of younger folks like you and others at this meeting that actually have a very different perspective that, hey, you can actually be doing great things, being a wonderful entrepreneur, making lots of money, creating wealth, but actually be doing really good at the same time. And that's a big mindset shift. I'd also say that, or not say, but if you think about the generational transfer of wealth over the next 20 years, there's going to be about $40 trillion of wealth moving from the baby boomers and older to the millennials and younger. And if that's going to be the mindset, you're going to actually see a huge flow of capital to address a lot of important societal issues through entrepreneurship, where, again, you can be doing good and doing well at the same time. So that's the demand side of it. The supply side is equally interesting. And while Christine, you talked a lot about Africa and Haiti, and we actually have a lot of cases in my course that we have on Africa and other emerging markets. But since I also have an impact fund in India, I'll give you kind of the demographic overview, which I think actually applies to most emerging markets, and in fact, even to developed markets like the US, is that if you take in India, it's 1.3 billion people, roughly. About 200 million of them are kind of really wealthy or the middle class. And most private capital, businesses, et cetera, are targeted towards that 200 million. Then you look at the bottom 4 to 500 million, and there's obviously countries like India and China and other countries in Africa and in Haiti have tried to reduce that number, but it still exists in droves, as what I would call really the true bottom of the pyramid, where building a business model around those folks is really hard to do. And so therefore, they're really the target of government spending, development spending, philanthropic spending. So in the case of India, you've got 200 million at the top, maybe say 500 million at the bottom, right? You still have 600 million people in the middle. And while we talk about the pyramid, this is more like a bulge in the middle. And this is what I characterize as the aspiring middle class. These are folks who have, because of technology, digitization, like you mentioned, have more aspiration. Their income levels are going up because the broader country is growing. And they've got a huge potential spending power and a huge business opportunity, where at the same time, you're going to be providing products and services that benefit the economy and the community. So you have, from the supply side, this demographic issue. And the second issue, which I think COVID has really highlighted over the last 12, 18 months, is that the digitization that has happened and accelerated over the last year and a half, most people would expect at the end of 2019 that this would happen over 10 years. This has happened in less than 18 months. And so any kind of tech, health tech, education to ed tech, agri-tech, fintech, there's just this confluence where that 700 or 600 million people in the middle, essentially delivering products and services to them by enabling technology, by bringing in innovative business models to address needs in a profitable way, is huge. So you have the demand and the supply kind of converging in a way that no one actually expected. And I think that's where, as entrepreneurs think about fundraising, think about businesses, I would really spend a considerable amount of time focused on that opportunity. You mentioned that 10 billion people in the world. Well, about 3 billion people are going to be this aspiring middle class, where there is a massive business opportunity. Historically, what has happened is that companies have, through government policy, others, been forced to address or market products and services to them. But if you actually build business models that are completely targeted to that customer base, where they're at a product and a service that is targeted to that customer base, at a price point that makes sense for that customer base, and with a business model that makes the company that's delivering that product or service profitable, it's a huge win-win for everybody. And I, based on my, both at HBS as well as in India and other parts of the world, I find that impact capital is being diverted to that kind of opportunity in a big way. I think the way entrepreneurs should position this is, while you're doing good, it's a huge economic opportunity. Ultimately, still, capital will go where there is a big economic opportunity. And here you've got an opportunity that's going to provide you returns, but it's also going to be making a massive difference in people's lives. So I think that's, it's the last mile delivery. And now that you've got technology, basically delivering services to that 600 million people in India, 3 billion people globally, has been extremely hard because of technology impediments. The last mile delivery is extremely expensive. And as a result, building business models that are profitable and sustainable and scalable has been difficult to do. But I think that has changed now. I have, over the last year or so, seen some tremendous opportunities in, as I said, medtech, edtech, agritech, fintech, which did not exist a couple of years back. So I know I've only got 10 minutes, so just to conclude, I would say that as an entrepreneur, that's the pool of capital that I would, whether it be through crowdfunding and other sources, there's more and more capital because of the millennial growth, the transfer of wealth to younger folks who have a different mindset, and on the demand side, because of digitization and the demographic issue that I talked about, there is a huge, huge opportunity. And I would encourage folks in this meeting to really tap into that, because folks are looking, investors are looking for interesting opportunities. And therefore, this demand-supply match is kind of inevitable. So anyway, Christine, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here as part of this event. And congratulations to you and your team for all the progress you've made over the years.